I've only got 2 pages of notes, so this is going to be a quick one. Canada, and this is season 1 of my knitting podcast titled Knitting for Twins. This is episode 8 now. We're 8 episodes along, and this is week 25 of my twin pregnancy. I'm expecting identical twin boys in June. First off, I wanted to make sure I did this at the beginning because I know I forgot to do it at the beginning of last week's episode. I want to say thank you so much to all of my returning viewers. There's a growing number of you who are coming back week after week. And I'd also like to invite and welcome and thanks everyone who is joining in for the first time. I hope you like what you find here and that you stick around and click subscribe. Speaking of clicking subscribe, we've hit 500 plus subscribers. I think we're like 540 right now. And to that extent, I have launched my 500 subscriber giveaway. You can click here to watch the little video promo for the 500 subscriber giveaway, and I'll put the information for the Ravelry thread in the doobly-doo below. To be eligible to win that giveaway, you just need to be a subscriber here on this YouTube channel. Head over and join my Ravelry group and answer the prompt in that thread. The prompt, of course, because this is my yarn lab, is for you to tell me about one fiber-related experiment that you are most proud or excited about having sort of embarked on in the past. So all the information for that is in the doobly-doo below or in clicking the video that I linked. And again, I just wanted to quickly say thank you so much for getting me to this 500 subscribers milestone. It's overwhelming and exciting, and I think, you know, I don't want to be focused on trying to aggressively gain subscribers. That's certainly not the goal here. But I will say that watching that number tick up gives me inspiration and motivation to keep producing videos, not just the podcast, but shorter, more informative videos or vlog-like videos throughout the rest of the week. Knowing that there's an audience out there that is tuning in and appreciating it drives me to produce a little bit more. So thank you very much for everyone who has clicked subscribe and everyone who has shared this channel with a friend or with the fiber community in general. Next up, I'm just going to do a really quick pregnancy update. I am 25 weeks along now, and things are getting round. So I will show off the baby bump. There's not a lot of room here for me, but as you can see, I'm beginning to look like someone who is approaching full term very quickly, despite the fact that I still have another 3 months of this. I've actually had a couple of people who have asked me if I was ready to pop any second, and I have to quickly clarify that it's twins, and that's why I'm this big at only 25 weeks. And it's starting to really feel big. Even like getting into a comfortable position on the couch to do knitting is beginning to be a challenge. So for everyone who, I mean, maybe it's just because I have like the worst futon couch in the world, but for everyone who has been a pregnant knitter at some point, if you've got any tips for the most comfortable knitting positions once the baby bump gets a little bit big and awkward, please let me know. Apart from that, everything's going great. I have ultrasounds and OB appointments this week, so looking forward to getting to see my little boys on the ultrasound again. So that's always a treat. Yeah, so apart from feeling huge and starting to be slowed down quite a bit, things are still going really great pregnancy-wise, and I'm still really in love with this stage of pregnancy. Next up, I wanted to do my pod love or podcaster love section. I didn't do one last week, but I'm doing one this week. And I wanted to shout out specifically to 2 fellow Calgarians. So first off, I'm sure that you guys all know her already, but if not, you need to go check out Candace from the Pin Feathers and Pearls podcast, and I will link over to her channel right here. Candace is absolutely lovely, and I'm pretty sure that the 2 of us need to go out for a coffee soon because, oh, not a coffee, a Santa Secret tea. But I'm pretty sure that we would be really great friends. We have a lot in common. She's a super nerd like I am, and we've actually had some bonding in the comment sections over her videos, over our love for Final Fantasy VII. So definitely check Candace out. She's a really great knitter. She does her podcast from her living room in her apartment with her like green parakeet or budgie. I always called all birds budgies because I had one when I was little, although ours was blue, but she's got her green bird and her little hamster. I think he's a hamster. I don't know. Little rodent, and they join in on her podcast with her. But yeah, Candace is super great. She's running a stripy socks knit along that has been getting quite a bit of popularity and joining in from other podcasters. So you've probably heard of the Stripy Socks KAL. If you check out that hashtag on Instagram, the projects that are rolling in are really inspiring, especially to new sock knitters like myself. So Candace, check her out. She is awesome. And then the second Calgary podcaster that I just wanted to shout out to is Carla from the Knit Nicks podcast, and I will link to her channel right here. She is a new podcaster, which is a relative term coming from someone who has only made 8 episodes. She's got 4 up. But what I really quite like about her is that she's been doing these lovely shorter, like 20 to 30 minute episodes, which are kind of like a little breath of freshness amidst podcasts that are oftentimes running closer to 2 hours, some of the ones that I watch. So she's really great to check out if you're looking for just a little short, like a little nugget of a podcast. But they're great and informative, and the knitting is exciting. So check out Carla as well. And then in general, if you are looking to find more Canadian podcasters, and why wouldn't you, I just wanted to mention that Shannon from the Socksetera podcast has put up a thread in her Ravelry group, and I will link this in the description below, linking to all of the Canadian podcasts that are out there. So there are quite a few more than I even knew about, and I need to go through that list and click on them and make sure that I am aware of all of the great knitting that's going on here in the Great White North. So, speaking of knitting, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this week's podcast. First off, as for what I'm wearing, this is my Lafayette shawl that I showed off as a finished object last week, and I've since blocked it. It is 100% acrylic. It's knit in the Red Heart Boutique Unforgettable line, and I did put together a video showing how I steam blocked this project, because you can block acrylic without hurting it, and it's really quite simple. So if you're interested, you can click right here for that video. This shawl is really great. It's super long, and I find that, and other people might think I'm crazy for saying this, but sometimes when I wear a wool shawl, I get like aggressively hot, especially now that I'm pregnant, and acrylic, it just doesn't hold heat the same way that wool does, and so it's a little bit less aggressive on the pregnant lady hot flash syndrome. So I have been wearing this shawl quite a bit since I cast it off last week. That's all I have to say about that. But finished objects. I only have 2 this week because I've been working on some bigger projects that have been sort of eating up my knitting time. First off, I have the prototype number 2. So this is a baby sweater that I'm designing. It's the back. So the idea is to use a self-striping or self-patterning sock yarn and put it to different purpose. And essentially I've been working on all of the shaping. I've done this original prototype in different colors. This is run number 2 through the pattern, and I've got the pattern all written out a 3rd time to go with run number 3, which I think will be the final version. There's still a couple things that I need to workshop on this little guy to make the sweater exactly the way that I want it to be before I send it out to test knitters and release the pattern. But overall, I'm getting there. I did some things that I liked a bit more on this one, but then also made a horrible miscalculation and ended up doing too many decreases through the body. So, I mean, the two prototypes are still wearable and they're still going in the stash of knitted goods for my boys, but I'm excited to cast on and bang out what I think will be the final version. Once I do have that final version, I will probably put together a quick independent video discussing the design process for this little garment, since I mean, I've never designed a sweater before, and baby sweaters are a nice sort of size place to go to for your very first sweater designs, but there have been some interesting sort of learning steps, learning curves, and in knitting multiple prototypes and watching it evolve, it's been a kind of really unique design experience, and I think people might be interested in sort of a bit of a more in-depth discussion. So once I do have the third and final version of this sweater produced and the pattern released, I do want to do sort of a, the process of creating a sweater design independent video. So let me know if that sounds like something you guys would be interested in hearing about. I will just say it's knit out of Patton's Croy sock yarn. I might do some final ones up in some more exciting indie dyed yarns, but for the design process I just wanted a relatively accessible and inexpensive self-striping, self-patterning yarn to test all of my samples in. So, FO! The next finished object is of course a pair of them because I am knitting for twins. This is the not Easy Breezy, it's just the Breezy Baby Hat pattern. It's a free Ravelry download by Knitting Moon Designs, and I will put the link to that information in the description below. It's just a simple little baby hat with a adorable little crocheted loop on top, which is a nice alternative to pom-poms. And the yarn is from my own collection of recycled and hand-dyed yarns. So I will cut to video because I did want to show off the skein, or cake rather, of this yarn before I cast it on, to show you that it was dyed up in a gradient, and I sort of pulled the ball apart to get, I didn't use adjacent sections of the gradient. I decided I wanted to go with a more pronounced color change in the hat, so I kind of knit from the blue center and then skipped a section and went to a lighter blue, and then knit from the green outside, skipped a section and went to a lighter green, and I really like the way that that turned out. I don't have the fiber content of that yarn written down, but it is a wool, acrylic, and angora blend, and it's got a kind of really great halo. I'm not sure that you would be able to see the halo on my camera here, but it's got a great halo from the angora. It's super soft and fuzzy from the wool and the acrylic and the angora. So that is, like I said, recycled yarn from commercial sweaters, hand dyed by yours truly, and two little baby hats. So that's it for finished objects. I have a nearly finished object, and that's this little fish. And he is knit from the rest of the gradient, so hopefully it's not too washed out, but you can see that he's starts the blue section of the gradient and then goes through to the green from nose to tail. And this is just a free pattern from Lion brand, and I will link that information below. I did make some alterations. The pattern calls for you to knit the 3 sections independently, and I said, ugh, especially with doing color changes, because I had to cut my yarn so that I could work through the gradient faster, so I would get the whole gradient on the fish, right? Because the gradient was over the course of a very large skein of yarn, and when you're working a small project, so I would work a couple rows in the very blue, cut the yarn, move ahead to a green or to a bluey green section, work a couple rows that sort of deal. So you could progress through the gradient relative to the size of the project. So I had a ton of ends to sew in on this guy, and I didn't want to have to do that 3 times knitting the side pieces individually. So I cast them on in the round, which was an adaptation for the pattern. I made the tail a bit bigger. The pattern calls for kind of a stumpy little tail, and I crocheted on the top fin. I'm not sure that I'm going to add any the 2 side fins that they call for, because I think that the triangle shape of the fish kind of produces little nubby fins all on its own. And I'm also not closing the nose on the front, since it kind of looks like fish lips. So he is stuffed, but he's not quite sealed, but the hole is small enough that no stuffing is going to come out. All he needs are some eyes and maybe some gills. I'm not sure if I will do gills, but he needs eyes, and he's going to be part of a collection of fish and sea creatures that are going to be hung mobile style in my boys' room. So keep your eyes peeled for a growing collection of fish and sea creatures. And I'm gonna have to message Shannon, because she just announced that she wants to do a mini along KAL for people who are doing like mini socks and mini hats and mini mittens to do on garlands. And she did mention that you could knit the birds of paradise, so I should be able to knit mini fish and include that in that knit along. So I'm just going to check with Shannon as to whether mini fish sort of, as to whether her mini along would encompass like mini knitted animals and stuff. So, because it'd be nice to be able to knit along with that, to make a mobile for my boys' nursery. So, cute little fish. He is pretty adorable, and I'm really glad that I worked the gradient through like that, because it's subtle, the green to blue here, because the darker colors were both used up for the hat. So it's subtle, but it's really sweet and nice. So, mini fish. And that brings me to the rest of my work in progresses. So I'm only going to show you essentially 2 this week, because I'm only showing you the works in progresses that I've made any progress on since last week. I don't think there's any point in pulling out projects that have just sat untouched since the last time they were featured. So only the projects that I've been working on. And since I did do a bit of knitting with that new yarn that I cast on, I haven't been working on a ton of projects. First up though is my very first sock, and I put a little stitch marker on here as a progress keeper. So since last week I have made it to the heel and turned the heel and have started working up the cuff. The sock looks huge. I've never knit a sock before, and I don't really have a good grasp for when people are showing their socks on their podcasts of how huge it might be relative to their foot, but it fits like really great. I should say the pattern that I'm following for this sock is the toe up, short rows, toe and heel recipe that was published in the Knitty magazine, and I will link that information, of course, in the description below. And I'm knitting it on US size 1 needles, so those are some millimeter size. I think they're like 2.25, something like that. Anyways, US size 1 needles, I do know that is correct. They're the Knitter's Pride ones, and they're wooden, so the label, the painted on label of size basically rubs off as soon as you start using them. I have found with these needles, but knitting them on DPNs, and the yarn is the Manos del Uruguay Alegria in one of 2 of their bright hand-painted colorways, and I've lost the ball band, so I'm not quite sure which of the 2 it is. But I'm excited for it. I'm not too sure how far up the leg I want to go with the top half of the sock, especially because I don't like to wear socks pulled up high. I usually will wear ankle socks anyways, So I might just do a couple more rows and then go into the rib section and finish off sock number 1. Speaking of finishing off socks, I am running a Sock Virgins knit along. So this is a KAL for those of you who have never completed a pair of socks before or even embarked on a pair of socks before. You can go on over to my Ravelry group, and I will put the information in the description below, and join in to knit your first pair of socks. If you know somebody who needs a little bit of extra incentive to overcome that barrier of their first pair of socks, please send them my way and we will help enable them to become sock addicts. Once you cast on and you really, like I found as soon as I got to the heel point, I was like, okay, this is awesome, but I want to try out different sock construction techniques. I want to try out pattern socks. It's inspiring. It gets you hooked. So send them on over to the Sock Virgin Knit Along. So the other work in progress that I did make quite a bit of progress on this week is my 3-color Cashmere shawl. I said caul, which I guess would be a combination of cowl and shawl. But this is the 3-color Cashmere shawl that I'm knitting as part of the Grocery Girls knit along for this project. I think that it's going to need blocking. Something about the way that that garter tab cast on really wants to roll in and not lie flat, the top section here. But last week I had finished section 1, which are the eyelet lace larger stripes. This week I powered through the small stripes section, which, like, these are not short rows anymore, guys, because you're increasing 3 stitches on each side every 2 rows essentially. So the shawl grows quickly this way and not so quick this way. But I love the fabric that the yarn is making. The yarn that I'm using is just Cascade Heritage sock yarn in the purple and gray, and I'm ready to come in with my pop of this sort of appley, it's like a Granny Smith, like think of like the most fresh and delicious looking Granny Smith that you would see. So I'm doing the next colored section in this Granny Smith green. And the only thing that I wanted to point out is some people who are doing this knit along or this pattern choose to use their color C for one of the stripes in this section to give like a little pop of that color sooner. I decided against doing that and opted to just stick to the pattern. The other thing, and I think it's on this side here, well, it's a good sign that I can't figure out which side it's on, no, it would be on this side, is that for all of these stripes I didn't want to have like 500 ends to weave in, so I just carried my second color up the side. So I don't know if you can kind of see it. It's really not noticeable, the carries of the second color up the edge, to avoid having like 500 million ends, especially since you're only carrying it past 2 rows each time. So yeah, really excited to get the green section started, and we'll hopefully have that green section done by next week. I haven't made any other progress on my other works in progress. I do have a secret work in progress going on, and all I will tell you is that I have started knitting up my rainbow of Caron Simply Soft that I showed off last week, and it's going to be for a pattern that I'm designing. So far I'm through the red section and I absolutely love the way it's going to turn out. So hopefully I will be getting through a section or 2 each week so that the project can be released to you guys as a finished object, as opposed to showing you the steps along the way, because I will be writing up that pattern for sale, so I don't want to sort of give it away until it's finished. But I'm really excited about it. So maybe that's a pain. I know it's frustrating sometimes to hear podcasters talk about projects and not show them to you, but it's been eating up a lot of my knitting time, so that's part of why I don't have as many FOs and whips to show you this week. So that's it for knitting. I didn't really do any crochet this week, apart from the fit on this guy. And then when I finish off baby projects, I do crochet squares for the boys' memories blankets. I haven't showed that since like the first or second episode. Maybe I'll do an update on where the memories blanket is for the boys next week. So that's it for this type of fiber arts. I do want to go into the spinning and fiber section just to show you something that is, at least to me, super exciting. And that is some more fleece. Don't mind the Cisco box. It's just a convenient box that I had on hand. But last week I showed off that mound of carded BFL, not carded, of combed BFL locks that was like, you just want to dive into. So this week I wanted to show you what that fiber looks like before it becomes so amazingly soft and cloud-like, and it still is pretty soft and cloud-like. So this is about 1/4 to 1/3 of my washed BFL fleece. There will be a video in the next couple days showing you the process of taking this fleece from something that very much smelled and looked like a barnyard to this state here. So this is all washed and is ready for me to continue with the combing out of the locks, which does take quite a bit of time. So this is actually like a huge amount of work here in this box. But just showing you, like, even with veg matter still in it, even, you know, a little bit matted and not, it's not felted by any means, but fleece is like a little bit matted and you gotta pull it apart and comb things out before you're gonna spin it. Although some people do spin right from this state, depending on the types of yarns that you want to make, but I'm going for a woolen style yarn. No, a worsted style yarn. Yeah. Woolen, carded, worsted, combed. So I'm going for a worsted style yarn, so I'm combing out all of my fibers so that they're nice and aligned for spinning. But yeah, this is washed BFL fleece, guys, and it feels so great on your hands. And then I showed you how great the staple length was last week in combed form, but so I just pulled out a lock here. So like that's the staple length of BFL. So that's the lock that they are shearing off of the sheep. You can see the cut end up here and the tips down here. So like BFL, it's a beautiful long wool, guys, and it's got great luster. There was a lot more lanolin in it now. There still is a little bit of lanolin to the touch because I didn't really scour all of the lanolin off with high heat, but I think that a little bit of lanolin makes it handle nicer for spinning, so I'm really excited to work my way through this box over the next couple weeks, combing out all of those locks. And I wanted to show it to you. And now I'm going to awkwardly not be able to close this box, so we're just going to put it over here. And that brings us to stash enhancement. And I have none. Zero. Zilch. I did declare a yarn diet until the Calgary Fiber Shindig, which is a fiber festival that's happening here on, I believe, April 16th. I will put the information in the description below and over on my Ravelry group. If you're in the Calgary area and are looking to come to a bit of a fiber show in April, it's smaller but it's lovely and I'm really excited about it. So I needed to be on a yarn diet until that point. That being said, last week I failed miserably at it and brought home that rainbow gradient of Karen Simply Soft. And I also am waiting for an order of yarn from Hue Loco to arrive. But this week I brought home 0 new yarn into my house, which is really great, especially when, like, this right here represents a whole skein that is out the door. So I am actually in the yarn out is winning this week rather than yarn in, which is a good week, guys. It's a good week sometimes when yarn out wins over yarn in. So no stash enhancement, but I did want to show you that I have been starting to wind up some mini skeins, just of some of the sock yarns that I've had around, that I finished off projects with, and these are all little, I'm winding them up according to length, not weight. So I'm not sure how other people do their mini skeins, if they weigh it out and they do like consistently a 5 gram or a 10 gram mini skein, but I'm kind of the opinion that the length of the yarn determines more what you're going to be able to do with it than the weight of the yarn. So I've been doing consistently 24 meter mini skeins, and I'm going to put little ball bands, it's just striped line paper ball bands, on all of them, so that they are ready to go out if anyone wants to do mini skein swaps or when I send out packages. So I'm going to be slowly accumulating. I need a bigger vessel for my mini skeins. I might empty out one of my yarn desiccators that's holding small balls and fill it up with mini skeins. But I've been, making and labeling up some mini skeins this week. And then speaking of mini skeins, I haven't shown this in a couple weeks, but I did add 3 more squares to my Very Baby, teeny weeny sized cozy memories blanket. So there's the Patton's Croy that came off of the second prototype that I finished. This guy here is my leftover hand spun that I spun up the English fin. So this was what was left over after I skeined out enough for the West Knits exploration station, and I just dyed it with this like not speckling, it's like a variegated, it reminds me of clouds on a blue sky, and that's what this mini skein is. So it's like the natural white with blue sky blues. So I put in 1 square of that, and this one here is actually cotton. This is Red Heart Luster Sheen something. I made a pair of shorts out of this. If you go into my projects on Ravelry, you'll see the shorts that I made out of that one. So yeah, so we're up to like seven squares now. I won't show this every week. For me, it's not interesting to show it off with like 1 square added, but every couple weeks we'll slowly watch my Cozy Memories blanket go from less of a, you know, little rag and more of a blanket. But that's about it, guys. Thanks for watching through the end. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. I think that it did stay shorter. We might be in the under 30 minutes range this week, which is great, because it will save me some time in editing this video as well. But that's all for now. Happy knitting, happy crocheting, happy spinning, happy experimenting with your fiber, guys, because after all, this is the Yarn Lab.